They taped a $380 fine to my front door for parking my beat-up Little John boat in my own driveway. 2 weeks later, the HOA president chained the public ramp and told my 12-year-old she was trespassing on members-only water. So I did the most disrespectful thing you can do to a bully with a clipboard. I changed the map under her feet, and when she crept down at 2 a.m. with red cans to poison my lake. The cameras were already watching. My name's Evan Carter. Electrician in Willow Bend, North Carolina. Live in a 1-story ranch with my wife Renee and our daughter Emma. Our yard runs right into Hawthorne Lake, and that water is where we breathe. Sunset bobbers. Saturday, grills the dog, stealing hot dogs, and me pretending to be mad. The boat isn't pretty. 15 feet dent on the port side from the spring. I hit a stump, but it's ours, and it's where Emma learned to bait a hook without flinching. So when I found that foxglove landing letterhead with the cartoon sun and the words, "Final Notice. Unauthorized watercraft storage. $380. Signed by Deborah Klein, HOA. President, something in me locked up, not because of the money, because of the nerve. I brought it to Renee. She read it and gave me that look. All spouses know, please don't make this a war. And I said, it's theft with a logo. Where does it stop today? A boat, tomorrow the color of my grill cover. You know what I mean. I went to office hours at the clubhouse the next morning. Fluorescent lights humming folding tables that looked borrowed from a church basement. Deborah, sitting straight-backed with her paper stacks, and those glasses she pushes up when she wants you to feel small. Paige Soto beside her, nodding like a bobblehead. And I slid the notice across the table and asked her to show me the clause that lets them charge a boat fee on private property. Deborah didn't even read it. She just softened her voice and sharpened her words. Mr. Carter, the board has broad authority to preserve aesthetic integrity. Your vessel was visible from the street. It's a blight. And Paige chimed in with an oil leak accusation that was flat-out fiction. I keep a pan under my motor, like a religion. I told them to point to the line in the covenants. She smiled with all teeth and said I could appeal, while adding a late fee that magically turned 3D into FIFT, and I walked out with copies of the CC&Rs and a feeling in my chest I couldn't shake. Then came the little cuts, tow notice taped to my garage clipboard. Patrols pacing my property line, a meeting where Deborah said, some residents think rules don't apply to them, and heads turned like sunflowers toward me. And I could have eaten the fine to save the headache. Yeah, that happened. But the day Emma came home from the dock with her tackle box half spilled and her cheeks blotchy because a line of kids in matching Hawthorne Anglers Circle shirts told her she was trespassing and that her dad didn't pay his bills. The quiet part of me snapped. I did what I know how to do when something won't make sense. I laid those covenants on my workbench, grabbed a highlighter, and followed the wire like a short in a wall. Night at 1. Nothing night. 2 nothing night. 3 in an appendix. No one reads. I found a sentence as clean as sunrise. HOA jurisdiction ends at the high water mark. Not into the lake, not over the docks, not at the ramp. At the edge, full stop. I tested the edge with a small fight. They popped me for improper storage of gardening tools. I mailed a polite letter with Article 3, Section 2 highlighted, and a time-stamped photo of muddy gloves beside a half-planted hydrangea. 2 weeks later, a quiet note said, rescinded no apology, but a crack is a crack. Deborah felt it, so she went bigger. The all-caps email with swirly script announced the Hawthorne Anglers Circle. Keypad gate ramp permits $600 initiation and $2 a year for members in good standing. And it didn't read like community care. It read like a cash register, like ownership, by people who didn't own it. And I realized arguing inside her sandbox was a fool's game. I had to pick up the sandbox and move it. I drove to Redford County Records. You know, the smell of old paper that outlived everybody. Those dim terminals, where you scroll past surnames. Nobody names their kids anymore. And I traced parcels back before Foxglove was even a drawing. Found the lake bed, and a 30-foot buffer had never been transferred to the developer. It sat with the Hawthorne Water Conservancy Trust, a zombie account managed by a bank in another state that probably forgot it existed, which meant the HOA had been swaggering across a thing it never owned. I called a friend I trust with the heavy lifts. Marcus Hale Marine turned trucking company owner, a quiet man who hates bullies more than he likes sleep. And over coffee at a diner, he asked if I wanted to argue or change the field. And I said I want to make it so she can't play this game anymore, period. And he said he'd back whatever gap I couldn't cover if we kept it clean and fair for everyone once it was done. While the lawyers worked, I did the one thing that probably confused Deborah the most. I paid the original $380 I waved at her golf cart. I stopped fighting in public and let her think I was tired, and while she called a special session to hand the Anglers Circle exclusive management of lake access points. The vote was a sea of hands. People. I fixed porch lights for raising them like they were swearing into a club, and I went home to stare at the unsigned deed until Minette Whitaker from 2 houses down handed me a beer, sat on an upside-down bucket, and told me about a foreman who measured sideburns and took a little more every week, and he said men like that don't stop. They get stopped. And I signed. The grant deed recorded on a Monday at 4:42 p.m., and that night I mounted 3 trail cameras on the path and the dock not for deer. For memory, because truth needs receipts when people perform innocence for a living. 2 weeks later, the monthly meeting felt like Deborah's victory lap. Cookies at the door slide deck about record engagement. My address printed on the agenda like a diagnosis, and she read an enforcement action against me with a smile. Remove boat in 72 hours, restraining order coming, and asked if I had anything to say. So I stood, skipped the podium, went to the whiteboard and drew a square neighborhood and a blue lake. Asked her to show me where the covenants gave her authority over water. She said broad powers and a lease to the Anglers Circle, and I pinned a certified plat and traced the HOA boundary in red. Stopping dead at the high water mark, then I posted a cease and desist from the Hawthorne Trust. From 4 years ago, telling them to stop acting like they owned what they didn't. And finally, I held up the deed with the county seal and said, as of last Monday, at 4:42 p.m., I own the lake bed, the dock structures, the ramp, and the 30-foot buffer. The club's lease is void. The gate comes down. Anyone enforcing anglers' rules beyond the edge is trespassing. And then I said what I promised Marcus I'd do. Next week, access is free for all residents. No fees, no dues, if you want to fish with your kid, after work fish. The room tilted like a spell. Wore off, and folks remembered their own names. Mr. Whitaker clapped once, and the sound shook something loose. Deborah stared at the deed like it bit her. The keypad came off the next morning. Marcus showed with a portable grinder. We cut the chain and stacked it by the curb, like normal trash kids ran to the dock. Emma's laugh carried across the water again, and for 3 days it felt like a storm had finally moved on. On the 4th morning, the wind blew gasoline, and I saw the rainbow slick fanning from the ramp. 2 dead sunfish bobbing like props in a mean play. I called environmental and the sheriff, then I pulled the SD card, and at 2:14 a.m., there she was. Deborah in a hoodie with 2 red cans pouring along the riprap and watching it spread, no mask, no hurry. The kind of walk people use when they've always been told they're right. And I didn't post it or parade it. I took it straight to the sheriff and slid the laptop across the desk. The deputy's face went from polite to serious in 6 seconds flat. An hour later, dispatch called my cell with a report of a domestic disturbance at my address. The caller said I was armed and threatening a woman on my porch. I was stirring chili, and Renee was watering a fern. And I told dispatch this smelled like a swatting stunt from a person who just got caught. Officers rolled up soft and professional. And while one talked to me on the porch, another listened to his radio, and I caught pieces. Subject in custody. Admitted to false report. Gas cans in garage. And I looked at the azaleas, so I wouldn't smile. That night, 2 deputies stepped into an emergency board meeting, said Deborah's name read her rights, turned her gently, and clicked steel around her wrists as she passed the bulletin board, where the angler's flyer was still thumbtacked. And I didn't say a word, because handcuffs talk louder than I ever could. People ask if I went too far. If buying a lake bed is just bigger power dunking on smaller power. If I became the thing I hated. And maybe to some of you that's true. Or maybe what I did is what power is supposed to be. A shield for regular folks who mow their lawns and fix their fences and want to fish with their kids without a permit sticker sold by someone who thinks they own the sunset. You know what I mean. I sleep now, Emma. Sleeps now, and Renee still cracks jokes in the kitchen. You going to buy the sky next if they say the clouds are out of compliance. And I tell her, don't give me ideas. But the one thing I know is bullies count on exhaustion on you, paying the $380, because your time is worth more than your pride on neighbors staying quiet, and you forgetting how to read fine print. They don't count on you changing the ground under their feet, or showing up with receipts that don't blink at 2:14 a.m. So tell me where you land on this. Was I right to fight like that? Or did I cross a line? What would you have done? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me your HOA stories, what power looked like on your street, and who had to swing first to make it stop. And if you believe no neighbor should be bullied into buying their own life back. Hit like, hit subscribe, and share this with somebody who needs a spine today.